Welcome to the 2022 joint meeting of the Augusta Commission and the Augusta Legislative Delegation. We're excited to be joined by our colleagues from the state government. We welcome you to this conversation and look for some robust dialogue. If you would, mute your devices and phones so that we can move through this conversation, be able to take any questions as well. And with that, I want to welcome my good friend and colleague, Representative Wayne Howard, Chairman of our Legislative Delegation, with opening remarks and comments, as well as introductions of the Legislative Delegation. Chairman Howard.
You're muted. Mr. Howard, you're muted.
Mute. How about that?
That's good.
Okay, good. Sorry about that. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, and to the commissioners and my colleagues here on the Augusta Legislative Delegation. We look forward to this day each year to talk about some of the things that we may be faced with as we approach our legislative session that begins this Monday, January the 10th, which we will convene and begin to work on legislation that may affect
The door is unlocked already. It's unlocked.
that may affect us legislatively. So with that being said, we are looking forward to some of the conversation this morning and where we can chime in and be a part of the discussion and talk about the things that will impact the city and impact the citizens of Augusta. So with that being said, we'll go to the city highlights by the mayor. Muted, Mr. Mayor.
I wanted to take an opportunity. I know we all generally know one another, but this is a chance to just introduce everyone. If you would, just make quick introductions. I believe that there are some new people who are part of our team that are on this Zoom meeting as well. So if you'll just do that quickly, and then we'll move into some highlights of the past year that many of you may or may not be aware of from a legislative standpoint that impact the city that you represent and that you live in. So with that, let's just go around starting at the top. We'll start with the senator.
Good morning. Senator Max Burns, I represent District 23.
Lena Bonner, City Clerk.
Alvin Mason, Commissioner, District 4.
Ben Hassan, Commissioner, District 6.
Catherine Smith McKnight, District 3.
Dennis Williams, District 2.
Brandon Garrett, Commissioner, District 8.
John Franham, Commissioner, District 7.
This is Mark Newton, a representative of District 123.
Bobby Williams.
You're muted, Mayor Pro Tem.
Bobby Williams, District 5.
Odie.
I didn't know all the elected officials went. Odie Donald, Administrator, Augusta-Richmond County.
Wayne Brown, General Counsel.
Representative Gloria Frazier, House District 126.
Charles Jackson, Deputy Administrator.
Representative Sheila Nelson, District 125.
Okay. I don't see anyone else who's identified themselves. Again, thank you all for that. Want to share just a few highlights. 2021 was a year of challenge for the city of Augusta. I think all of us are certainly aware of that throughout Richmond County, dealing with the global pandemic that continues to persist even on today. But your government, the government of City of Augusta, was resilient. We weathered the storm, and we did that because of the team that you are meeting with, our administrator and his team. And we had a banner year. As a consolidated government, we were able to not only maintain our level of service delivery in spite of the pandemic, but we were able to meet the needs of our own employees throughout the course of that process as well. In 2021, we launched the Augusta Green Initiative with a goal of transitioning 20% of our fleet to alternative energy by 2030. There were several of you who joined us as we launched our first charging station at Diamond Lakes. We had a series of EV vehicles that were there as well. And we had our first launch with our charging station there at Diamond Lakes, right there next to the community center. We not only did that, but as a city, because we're dealing with the challenges of a global pandemic, through the American Rescue Plan dollars, we were able to launch the Vax Up Augusta campaign. We still are continuing to make strides in that area as we're vaccinating Augustans. We know that with this new variant, Omicron, it's highly contagious, and we see transmission rates that are going through the roof at this point. So I want to ask each of you to encourage your friends, your family members, and your colleagues to go out and get vaccinated if they have not. We not only did that, but we launched an online records management and retention system. Your government, the Augusta government, has been efficient and effective in our efforts, being good stewards of taxpayers' resources throughout the course of the year. And these are things that we are very proud of. They talk about local government being closest to the people. I want to applaud the efforts of our utilities and engineering departments, particularly around areas about potholes. We make jokes about this as elected officials, but we repaired almost 1,300 potholes in the year 2021. That's yeoman's work for our folks. We not only did that, but we provided public Wi-Fi on all public buses and the Broad Street Transit Station. We relocated 5 new companies into the city of Augusta, resulting in over 375 jobs. We continue to see a burgeoning film industry in the city of Augusta, with 1.4 million in film revenue generated and 80 plus local film industry jobs produced through our efforts and our economic development partners. And these are some highlights from the city of Augusta. We also, through the leadership of our members of the Augusta Commission and our Mayor Pro Tem, we introduced the city's first comprehensive blight ordinance that we're seeing success already. These are things that we're extremely proud of. We also joined about 9 other cities across the state of Georgia in enacting a non-discrimination ordinance that continues to demonstrate to people, to businesses, and individuals that Augusta's open, that we are a city that's inclusive. We're continuing to work towards being a city that's equitable in all of our efforts as well. And these are just some general highlights of the successes. We passed a balanced budget once again for 7 consecutive years. And we also ended the year with a budget surplus. This is a testament to the team that we have in the city of Augusta, our organization of roughly about 2,800 employees, things that we can all be proud of. And just as members of the state legislature, you understand that the most important work is passing a balanced budget for the state of Georgia. We take that and we pride ourselves on being able to do that here in the city of Augusta. And we have successfully continued to do that, as well as, again, end each budget year with a surplus. And so with that, I wanted to share those highlights. Sometimes you don't hear about these things and you may be wondering, well, what's happening in our city? There are things that get reported, and many of the good things that we do never get reported and are talked about. But I want to applaud the members of the Augusta Commission, the legislative body, for working diligently over this past year, quite frankly, the last 2 years, as we battled COVID and in challenging and sometimes uncertain times. We've continued to keep businesses open as well. We did a lot to help small businesses. which is the bedrock of our economy, not just in Augusta, but across this nation. And so for that, I want to thank the members of the Augusta Commission and share those highlights with our legislative members. And with that, we'll go to our next item, and that's local redistricting, and turn it over to the senator from the 23rd and the representative from the 123rd.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity to meet with the commission today.
Excuse me, Mr. Senator Burns, I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Sorry.
Before we go there, can we go to item number 2 for the legislative priorities, and then we'll come back to that to give Senator Jones a chance to get back.
No problem, Mr. Chairman. Happy to do that.
All right, thank you. So if we can go to legislative priorities, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, we could do that. I thought it was in my conversation with Senator Jones, he wanted to hear about those legislative priorities, but we'll start that. Administrator Donald, if you'll proceed, we certainly are happy to oblige.
All righty. Well, send the commission out just an update on some of the priorities that have been identified through some of our partners, whether it be GMA, ACCG, a variety of different partners, as well as department heads and local areas. I think one thing we want to highlight is, last year we had some items that came through the legislative session that we weren't necessarily able to track. Some of them end up working very well for us. Some of them, if they would have passed, would have been challenging for us as a government. One, or I'll say 2 items that passed that I think were extremely helpful were House Bill 317, the Lodging Facilitator Bill. I think that was very important for us because just in last year, I think, there were hundreds of thousands of dollars in new revenues that we saw, and just across Georgia, about $35 million in additional revenues went to local governments. And so for us, that's a really big deal. And I think it adds on to the marketplace facilitator bill. So we're really excited about that. It helps us increase our revenues without doing it on the backs of our residents. So that's really important. Also, with us getting hit with the coronavirus, been a very big deal to have House Bill 98 passed that allows for virtual public hearings and even meetings like this. So another thing that was extremely helpful. Even now, I will tell you that some of the things that are going forward that do concern us that were a part of the legislative considerations last year. Last year it was House Bill 328, which was the reduction in right-of-way fees that were owed to cities. A bill has not been pre-filed on that, but there has been conversation about that, specifically coming from our partners at GDOT. For us, that would be extremely damaging because it would lower the amount of the fees and revenues that we receive for putting things in our right of way. That could be very catastrophic to an organization in a community like ours if you reduce those fees. I think they're trying to reduce it from 20 cents per foot and $1,000 annually to about 5 cents a foot and around $200 annually. So you could just see by those numbers in some of the early conversations, that would reduce our fees dramatically. So that's very tough on us. And that's something that we want to make sure that the integrity of our right-of-ways and the fees and revenues that we receive remain intact. The timber truck weight limit increase was something that also was of concern for us, but we've not heard any talk about those things coming forward again. But again, trying to keep our revenues intact at a time where every area of our revenues is being hit by the pandemic with no additional funding appearing on the way is very important to us. I also think just locally, with us being kind of a hub city, it's also important, while most folks wouldn't think about it, we have so many people crossing the border going to South Carolina and into Georgia and up and down the coast and down into East Central Georgia. The changes in daylight savings time are something that could be problematic for our government, depending on how we move forward. So that's something that I think the commission is going to look closely at and potentially make some decisions. Submitted a list to the commission, and we can, after this meeting, we can also forward it to the delegation. But some of the things that we've seen that are on the horizon that also the commission will at some point need to take a position on is the expansion of annexation regulations and restrictions. With us being consolidated government, that's just something that we have to look at, which position we take, whether it be as a county or a city. I think in this instance, we would likely take the county position. And so looking at those restrictions closely is something that's important. I mentioned daylight savings time and the elimination of it, but also restrictions on regulatory fees. Of course, that's a challenge for us. Limits on property tax revenues, another challenge for us. Preemption of municipal ordinances and health codes related to food trucks, not giving us the ability to regulate as well as receive revenues for licensing on that is a challenge. Short-term rental regulations, I think, has been in the last 3 legislative sessions. Of course, for us, we want to make sure that we have control over those short-term rental regulations and, home rule and other local control types of activities support us continuing to have that kind of control. Very concerned about the elimination of alcohol excise taxes and regulations of homeless camps, taking the ability away from local governments to manage that process, and the preemption of our local building codes. All of those things have been discussed as possible bills to come through this legislative session, and they all are quite alarming for local governments. Mr. Mayor, any additional items that you would ask me to go over at this time, or the commission?
Administrator Donald, I think that's fantastic. There is one item, and it's not on our list. I've been tracking it in our news feed through GMA, and it's the issue of advertisement of meetings. I'll have to pull that. I was trying to look for it just then, but there's a growing concern amongst cities, municipalities all across the state of Georgia that we have this requirement, statutory requirement, to announce meetings in the local organ, when in fact, now that we have this technology available to us, we should be able to do that electronically on social media and other outlets. And so there's some legislation that is going to be drafted. I don't know who potential sponsors are, both in the House and or the Senate, but that's something that we definitely want you all to be aware of and mindful of. And as I get the details of that, I'll circle back around in our conversation today, just so you've got some clarity about what that is. But that's a big issue for cities, having the ability, as opposed to having to go and pay to put something in the newspapers, when in fact, we are all using social media for communication as a tool, and so on and so forth. So that's something that's being touted. Commissioner from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question around what some of the things that the administrator said. So if you want me to, you do have a Q&A at the end, but if you want me to allow me to ask it now, I will.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that now so we can have good dialogue.
And this is for members of the legislative delegation. When you hear some of the things that the administrator mentioned that potentially hurt local government, not just Augusta-Richmond County, but local governments, if those things are taken away, add or created new legislation, the question have always been for me is what are the thoughts of legislators in discussing that? I'm not saying anybody here is pro or con on those issues. So I'm asking about a broader conversation. What is the conversations around how does local government continue to survive if some of those tools they have in the toolbox are taken away or their downsized ability to help to continue regulating those things? What is the thought process of how will local governments continue to exist and not begin to continue to tax their taxpayers?
Is the question, what are our thoughts behind it? Or I mean, there was a lot on that laundry list that, was there something in particular, or is it just a approach to it?
I was about to ask the same question,
Okay.
Representative Newton. My question is, there were several items that the administrator gave us, starting with the timber truck on down to social media from the mayor. Are these bills, or are these just items that you've done some research on?
No, everything that the administrator has referenced, this is actual legislation.
Yes, so can we get the bill numbers?
In fact, administrator, we can transmit that document to them.
Yeah. So we provided some general information in advance of this meeting to the commission. We'll make sure through coordination with the clerk to forward it to you. Some of the early items that I was highlighting were some bills that were filed in the last legislative session that were not successful, but are being prepared for this session. So daylight savings time is one that I know was pre-filed already, and is one that I think, again, the commission has not yet taken a position, but it's one that I think we need to pay attention to. I can just tell you off the top of my head, SB 12 and SB 13 are the daylight savings bills. And again, it puts us in opposite time zones as, let's say, our partners in South Carolina, when we know that our workforce travels between Georgia and South Carolina quite a bit. And so that might be a challenge that we want to look at. Some of the other bills, we don't have bill numbers for, but we're gathering those currently. So with no question, as I alluded to before, we'll transmit the document to you so that you'll know the concerns that we have going into the session.
So can you transfer those documents to us so that we can, because I would imagine the other members can speak for themselves. Some of these items we can't keep up with every item because there are thousands of laws that are coming through. So to keep up with each one, unless it's on one of our committees, we can't. It will be somewhat tough to deal with. But on daylight savings time, I don't think that bill has gotten much traction because of that reason. The different time zones that they would put states in across, not just here in Georgia and South Carolina, but across the country. So I don't think that bill, in my opinion, other members can speak to this, has gotten much of any traction to get support from both houses.
Well, let me go back, and I just mentioned, may I, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I mean, another one that the administrator mentioned, such as the right-of-way fees. I think he said that was House Bill 328. And he had some figures there. The administrator, you can give me those figures again. The one I went was cut on the front end by 50%, and on the other, on the back side of it, it was cut almost by 80%, and able to generate revenue, if my calculations is correct. It went from 10 cents or $10 to $5 or what have you, and then from let's say $100 to $20 or something like that. And so I'm looking, so those are right-of-way fees and things of that nature that's going to be a bill that's going to impact local government. Those are one of the things that he expressed concerns about, bills such as that. Those tools that local government have, and they're constantly being stripped away to be able to govern yourself locally.
That matter, Commissioner from the 6th, that matter was hotly contested and debated in this past legislative session. I know that I talked to a number of you during session about this matter. I also spoke at length with Senator Gooch, who was shepherding this once it arrived in the Senate. This is an onerous piece of legislation that does impact us. The saving grace was that GDOT made some amends after the legislative session to talk about how they will work with cities and counties with the right-of-way money. We are still having those conversations. I know that at GMA on the executive committee, we had some robust conversations with Russell McMurray and his folks, but this is a challenge. Anything that, again, has the effect of reducing our revenue, that becomes a problem for us in the city because we've got to look for a way to make up that shortfall. And in this case, the shortfall comes as a result of state legislation. And I think that's the key message that the commissioner from the 6th is trying to articulate here. When we have those, we want to be able to work in a collaborative way so that as you all are seeing these types of legislative efforts taking place, and again, knowing how that process works, if you'll reach out to us and we can certainly weigh in on that. I think that's part of the conversation we'll get to when we talk about state coordination. And that'll lend itself to a much broader and hopefully more robust approach in terms of how we're working and collaborating together. I found my notes about the issue that I just mentioned, and we'll send it to you. But Earl Gray, the mayor of Fort Oglethorpe, he is the one who teed this issue up for us. But there is legislation that's going to be introduced to change the way that cities are required to advertise our meetings. Currently, we're required by law to do it in our local newspapers. As many of you know, newspapers are going digital themselves, not always in print. They're going digital. And if the paper is going to post digital, the question becomes, why do we as cities have to pay for something that our citizens are going to read online? So don't have the content of what that legislation looks like at this point, but that's the general premise, that as local organs, newspapers, et cetera, go digital, we have a series of sources allowing us to advertise these meetings, to include zoning matters on our webpage, as well as our social media pages, and able to reach many more citizens to allow us, and it'll also allow us to make changes as necessary while not spending money. That's the premise behind what Mayor Gray is wanting to be introduced. And so you'll see that, and we'll continue to track that because we do have those tools available to us to include our own city's webpage of how we're able to communicate with citizens.
Is that a pre-file bill or is that a bill that's
It's going to be a pre-file.
Okay.
Okay.
Is anybody monitoring rate are we supposed to hit the raise your hand button or just come into the conversation?
Well, for those who are not on screen, you certainly can hit the raise your hand button. But again, if you want to just chime in, that might be best because we don't see you on the screen.
Okay, thank you. I would just like to say to Commissioner Hassan, I understand his questions. He really didn't get a really clear answer about the legislation, but I would like for you all to know that a lot of the bills that Mr. Donald spoke about, we actually take them through our caucus and our caucus meetings. And many of those pieces of legislation that did not pass if you go back and look, you will see the opposition to them locally, because we've already vetted most of those, because they will affect local municipalities. Sometimes you have local districts that will introduce a bill, but it's for the good of that municipality, and it might not be good for everybody. Then they'll turn it from a local bill to a general bill, and that's how it gets to be a big conversation. So that's why it's so important that we meet, not just today, but have that relationship with Mr. Donald. So when these bills come up, I want to be able to speed dial you to say, okay, what is the cause and effect of this bill to Augusta, like I do for my other counties? And I get an immediate answer back, at least in a timely manner. So if you know when the bill is going to be brought up, because that determines on how we vote on these bills. So yes, we do know about a lot of these bills. We do vet them in the caucus meeting, and sometimes we take positions on them. But most of the time we leave it to the each representative according to their districts. If that kind of help you a little bit.
Thank you, ma'am. Representative Frazier.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Are there any other questions regarding this legislation or pieces of legislation that Administrator Donald has made reference to? Again, this list will be sent out. Ms. Bonner will send the list out at the close of our meeting. Okay. All right, if there being none, Chairman Howard, is this appropriate time to talk about the local redistricting matter?
Yeah, we can go on and begin.
Okay. All right, Senator Burns and Representative Newton.
Good morning again. Thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts. I appreciate Chairman Howard, and I certainly appreciate Mayor Davis. We have a challenge in front of us. This is something that is not new. Probably both the mayor and Chairman Howard have much more experience in this than I do. But I just want to let you know where I am as a senator from the 23rd. I represent portions of Commission District 3 and portions of Commission District 8. So first, I want to thank the ad hoc committee, the ad hoc local redistricting committee. They did a great job. I'm playing catch up. I was not on that committee. I have reviewed all the agendas. I've scanned and will continue to review carefully all the transcripts and all the videos from the meeting. So first, I want to thank the chairman of that committee, Commissioner Franham, for his work and for the work of that committee. And then after their work was completed, the work of the commission and certainly the school board. And I'll start by saying I fully respect your local input and your local positions on this. But I want to remind you of a couple of three things and then kind of share with you where I am on this particular issue. The process began on July the 20th. And in July, Gina Wright shared with the local redistricting committee basically a framework. And out of that discussion came on August the 18th, the committee adopted their redistricting guidelines and criteria for 2021. And all of you have a copy of that. If not, it's available online. All the information I have gathered from this work has been really available to me through your IT department, through your local board of elections, through your GIS department. I want to commend them and thank them for their work. I really appreciate the completeness with which they've shared that information, not only with me, but also with all the citizens in Augusta and Richmond County. But I think it's important that we go back to the guidelines that were adopted by the committee and make sure that we are holding to those guidelines and feel comfortable with them. So if you look at it, we want to draw lines that are equal in size, that certainly comply with the Voting Rights Act, the Constitution of Georgia, and the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, that they are contiguous, that there are no multi-member districts, and the committee in number 5 should consider boundaries of neighborhoods and precincts, compactness, connections, transportation links, preservation of core of the current districts, and then preserving communities of interest, which includes economic, social, school district, community and housing commonalities, and a shared interest of a community. It goes on with not pairing incumbents unnecessarily, and then identifying criteria that is not intended to limit consideration of any other principles or factors. So anyway, the committee adopted a set of guidelines, which was appropriate, and they worked diligently. They held, as you know, many of you, 4 of you were on the committee. Thank you for that service. There were 4 certainly members of the commission, 4 members of the school board, 4 members of the delegation. And I appreciate that work. Well, at the end of the day, we came to a situation in November, on November the 22nd, where perhaps after 4 months and 2 days of hard work, and the fact that that was the Monday before Thanksgiving, a motion was made to adopt an original draft. And that original draft was provided by the Legislative Office of Reapportionment and Redistricting. It was intended to be a starting point. It was totally a numbers analysis and evaluation. It did not have any local input or local influence on it. The individuals who drew the map were not residents of your community or our community. They're not residents of Richmond County or Augusta, and so they lack certain local knowledge. But the ad hoc committee could not come to a consensus on that particular evening, and they chose to adopt the initial draft. And as you know, and the record points out, it was a 6-3 vote by that committee on that evening. So 9 of the 12 members were present. 3 were not available. So as we look at the end of the day, 6 of 12 people, less than 51%, said this is what we should do. And then, as you know, the commission then took that under consideration. You adopted it, and as did the school board on a 6-4 vote. And now you've asked the local delegation, which I'm a part of, to sponsor that legislation and support it as local legislation. And regrettably, I can't support that position at this time. I think that we have to take a hard look at the current boundaries that are part of Augusta and Richmond County, the current precincts and the current communities, and to try to find a way to make these things work more effectively. I would suggest that there are alternatives. There are multiple alternatives. In November, Senator Jones and Chairman Howard and myself asked the redistricting office in Atlanta to review the map that they had proposed and to provide an alternative map that would maintain precinct boundaries where they could and maintain communities of interest. So effectively as limited changes as were necessary. They provided that alternative. Senator Jones then, as a member of the ad hoc committee, took it to the committee, and I'm still trying to understand, the committee chose not to consider that map. There were 3 maps that were provided as alternatives from your Board of Elections. And again, none of those maps made it through a consideration process. So we have 5 alternatives to work with, but the worst alternative in my mind was the first option, which was the starting point. It accepted no input from the community. It provided no opportunity for adjustments. And it basically said, well, we'll just take the first draft and move forward. And so regrettably, I'm not in a position to support that. Now, again, the mayor and the chairman have been through this process before. They understand the legislative side and they understand the legislative alternatives. But what I would very much like to do is to work with the commission jointly, to work with the school board jointly, and let's come together on a map that the delegation can support. All members of the delegation. Right now, certainly the delegation is split. I acknowledge that. The delegation is not consistent. We're not on a consensus position, but neither is the school board and neither is the commission. So what I'd like to do is pause, ask the mayor and the mayor pro tem to work with us so that we can come up with a proposal that all of the delegation can support. Now, none of us are going to get everything we want. None of us are going to get everything we'd like to have. But I do believe that we can do better. And Barack Obama said it best. Barack Obama said, we can be better. So I'd like to ask the commission to work with the delegation on providing a better option for the citizens of Augusta and Richmond County. And I'll ask Representative Newton to share his insights.
Excuse me, Senator Burns, before you go to Representative Newton, there were some sections in there where the audio went bad.
I'm sorry.
And so can you just repeat the part about the delegation? Where we are with the delegation as it relates to the maps.
All right, I made the comment and I believe it's a factual statement. The delegation is not on the same page. In other words, not all of our delegation feels as I do. We have members of the delegation that support the recommendation of the commission. We have members of the delegation that I don't believe can support the proposal from the commission. So we as a delegation are not yet in consensus. And I would suggest that the school board and the county commission are not yet at a consensus point. And I do believe that we need local input and we need local buy-in on any map, if at all possible, so that we can move forward with something that's better for Augusta and Richmond County, and we can do it through the local legislative process.
Okay, Mr. Mayor.
Does that answer your position? I would like for Representative Newton and Senator Anderson, if they choose to kind of weigh in on where they are on this discussion, and then I'm happy to entertain any comments or questions.
Okay, all right, so that's great. Let's do this, everyone. I know that this is a conversation that we all want to weigh in on. Pursuant to the agenda, I'm going to go to Representative Newton, and then I'll come back to the commissioner from the 4th and then the 6th, okay? We'll go in that order.
I have my hand up too, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm on the small screen today, so I do apologize.
Uh-huh.
All right, I'll come to the Mayor Pro Tem after Representative Newton, and then I'll go to the 4th and the 6th, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do appreciate the opportunity, amazing opportunity to serve alongside you guys, representing a over 280-year-old city. You guys know the wonder of Augusta, a vibrant downtown, an amazing linear park with the Savannah River. It's great to serve this whole area. I think going back to what Commissioner Hassan mentioned about, what's your approach when the local elected leaders say one thing? We all represent different areas and different constituencies. We have different rules and guidelines, just like Senator Burns mentioned, the guidelines, the 6 out of 12, but 6 out of 9 that were present voting did forward that initial draft map. And for example, that is an issue to where a lot of community feedback was delivered and not a single line was moved. And as Senator Burns said, I agree that you better unrules the way they are. And the former senator, the mayor, certainly understands them, as well as Chairman Howard. There's a process. These maps are passed by legislation. And so that they get recommendations from the communities, recommendations from the school board that are proposed, but local legislation has to be passed under the rules of the election, but also the rules of the House and the Senate, and ultimately signed by the governor to become law. That's where we're working under those rules right now. I believe from what I've heard from the Senate side and several of us who think we can do better, is that the current map will not pass as uncontested local legislation. It will not go forward from our delegation. It won't get onto the floor of the House or Senate. So having said that, now what we're presented with is, can we do better? And I think most of us think we can do. There are issues that are left over from 2012 where we can do better with districts that were split at that time. There are issues with current districts that are proposed that have long been together that are proposed to split into 2 or even 3 different districts. I think we can do better. We've heard from our community. I know really all members of the delegation, I think, have heard some from the community. Some of us who represent that area have heard much more vigorously. We're gonna listen to our constituents in the same way others listen to their constituency. We're gonna follow the rules of the House and the Senate for local legislation for passing map and proposing it by the governor after assuming it passes the House and the Senate. Certainly, it fully intends to cooperate with the Voting Rights Act and any other guidelines. We wouldn't even consider passing a map that didn't expect to withstand any kind of scrutiny in that area. So I think we can all work, and do, Senator Burns said, we can come up with a map that better represents Augusta, that better represents the areas and the communities of interest that we know far better than the junior draftsman who did the initial draft that was proposed. A starting point was never intended to be a proposed map to divide Augusta. And so I think we intend to work together with everyone to try to use the community feedback to understand the communities of interest, to maybe even go back 8-9 years to areas that may not have been treated as fairly as by the randomness of a judicial. We think that we can work together with people and come up with a map. Once again, none of us are going to get everything we want, but that's the nature of the legislative process. And I think we can come up with a good map and do great work for all areas, including the areas, like I say, that have been disappointed with the way their neighborhoods may have been split up 8, 9, 10 years ago. So I look forward to doing that. I hope that's something that that our community leaders are willing to, assign a couple of people, let us work together with the public as well as transparency, and get that done and get it done promptly.
Representative Newton, thank you. I want to go to the Mayor Pro Tem, and when necessary, Chairman Howard, you certainly chime in, sir. This is an interesting conversation, but when necessary, please do chime in. I'm going to go to the Mayor Pro Tem, the Commissioner from the 4th, and then the 6th, okay?
Okay. Good morning. I have a couple of simple questions. Senator Burns and Senator Newton. We talk about things that we can do better. So Senator Burns, you said things we can do better. Can you list about 2 or 3 things we can do better? And pointedly, what exactly are you talking about?
Well, I can certainly identify the desire, and I really feel the necessity to listen to community input and to recognize that the lines that you have proposed were initial drafts. So we had one precinct that was split into 3 separate commission districts. We had if you look at the map that was proposed initially, it has precincts that are split. It has neighborhoods that are not maintained. It tends to not allow certain areas of the Augusta-Richmond community to have a voice, and that's where I'm trying to come to. I'm trying to get to a point where every community across the county and the city has an opportunity to have a voice on the Augusta-Richmond Commission and on the school board. So the fact that we started with something that was a starting point, and we made no adjustments, and we did not allow input or act on the input. We accepted the input, we just took no action on it. We didn't take any action as a commission or a school board or the ad hoc committee. And I would say if you review, as I have, the video and the transcripts from the November 22nd ad hoc committee meeting, Chairman Franton implored the committee to continue to work on the maps. I mean, they were working hard on trying to find some adjustments that committee could agree to. And it is correct. And I remember Commissioner Hassan's hard work in trying to make some adjustments and realize that every time you move one piece, it affected another. And indeed it does. But I do feel that we can improve and we must improve. And if we're only going to take that initial starting point, I'm not in a position to support that. I'm not comfortable with that.
Well, let me go a little bit further. I think you said something about a district being split up. You got districts 4, 5, 6.
They're all.
So on. They've been split up for years.
Yes.
And I don't see how we can do a redistricting without somebody being split. You've got districts on the other side of town that have not been split up, and this map splits some of them up, and they don't want to do what has been done to other people. Now, so it's going to be a hard look. And then we talk about the majority of the people on the ad hoc for the redistricting voted to send this up. The school board voted as a majority to send this up, and they found that this was the best way to do it, whether or not you thought it was a starting point, an end point, or what have you. They looked at several different options and did not find anything any better than what they voted on. So my point is, it sounds as if, and I'm not throwing darts, I'm not shooting arrows, anything like that, but like some folks have spoken to you guys and asked you guys to take a look at it again, pulling along the commission as well as the school board. And I just don't see how we can work this out without somebody being split. But we're tired of being split in the 5th, in the 6th, in the 4th, and the what have you, and other people not taking on some of the responsibility like other folks in the city have taken on. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Commissioner
Just a
from the
comment,
4th.
Mr. Mayor.
Let me insert something here.
Okay.
What I wanted to say is I want to give a little background on how we got to this point here for this discussion with the commission. On last week, 5 members of the delegation met to discuss this matter, and all members of the delegation did not support what Senator Burns's comments are saying, but we did agree that out of respect, we would allow Senator Burns and Representative Newton to speak to the commission. So I just want to give full disclosure that this was not the full delegation's opinion of what we're discussing right now.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to my colleagues and to everyone involved in this conversation here. As a historical point of view, I was the chairman of the Redistricting Committee in 2012, served with Senator Davis at that time and a couple of others, and we did some good work, the best that we could at that particular time. And there were a number of subdivisions that were split, precincts that were split, and so forth. It was inevitable, it had to happen. And District 4, which was my district at the time, suffered the biggest split in terms of loss of personnel and precincts, subdivisions, and so forth. And we sucked it up because it was a part of the process that allowed us to move forward. Fast forward to where we are today as a member of that committee. For anyone to assert or make the assertion that there wasn't consideration given to the process and to the maps that we had in front of us couldn't be further from the truth. Now I'm going to speak for myself personally. I hear a lot of conversation about what happened at this meeting or that meeting. You have no idea the hours that I've spent at my home utilizing the resources that was given to us to be able to help move areas of the map around, subdivisions, precincts, and so forth. Because if you expected it all to be done in an hour session, we're fooling ourselves first and foremost. So if others didn't do the same thing, there's nothing that I can say about that. But I can tell you I spent hours on end ad nauseum at my house trying to find a way to get around what ended up being, and I'm just going to say it as it is, ended up being the biggest issues about this map, and that was splitting Somerville and Forest Hills. Those were the two major issues about this map. They did not, and they were very vocal about that, moving and what they would do as far as going to their senators and legislators and making a change, and this wouldn't be the last we'd hear of it. We've got threats and so forth. Got it, got all that. But at the end of the day, we did what we felt was the best thing to do. But to say that there wasn't consideration given or that no local input was taken would be wrong. The local input was given. All maps were looked at very, very, very closely. Now I'm going to give you just an example of one map, map number 3. Map number 3 had District 4 losing 7 of its current subdivisions, 7. Now, I don't know what kind of map that is, but that is not a map that would be conducive for anyone to vote for, in my opinion. I would be losing over half of my voting constituency by voting for map number 3. All 3 maps that was done here on the local level, all 3 maps had District 3 and District 7 not dividing a single precinct. District 3 and District 7 are predominantly white districts. That is a fact. I could not, in good conscience, vote for such a map. So again, when you say we can do better, better is subjective, better is relative. What is better? Better was what was presented to us as an option that came from the state with no biases. After hearing all of the information that came and the input that came from our various meetings that we had and the local input, because we could not get around the fact of Somerville and Forest Hills. So that is the elephant in the room that we're centered around. And if we're going to have honest discussions, and I would love to have honest discussions, let's discuss honestly the biggest problem about these maps and where the issues come from, those that were most vocal. But to say that we couldn't have split districts, District 3 and 7 weren't split, but everything else was, every other district was. 3 and 7, go look at it. Go look at the 3 maps, 3 and 7. That is about as unfair as it gets. As I mentioned previously, District 4 in 2012 lost over 3,000 some odd people. That's where the growth was at that particular time. We suffered the consequences behind that. We took one for the team. In no way, shape, or form should a map have came forward with District 4 losing another 7 subdivisions, gaining 5 new ones that had not been a part of their voting base before, which caused a ripple effect for every other district, especially District 5, 6, 4, 5, and 6. And that's extremely important. When you look at this map and the growth of this county, it was clear where the growth was in Augusta-Richmond County, which was District 3, which in the areas that bordered 1 and 2 was the most appropriate place for people to be moved out of 3 and into 1 and 2, because 1 and 2, which borders 3, were missing upwards of 2,000 people. That was the most appropriate. And I'm sure that's what the state saw when they drew this map. I took that into consideration. That is very, very important to keep us from going all the way around to 6 and 8, trying to compensate to keep Somerville and Lake Forest in place and having the same representative. I have Pepperidge. We have representatives from District 4 and District 6, both school board and commission district. I have Woodlake. We have Districts 5 and District 4 on the commission, plus school board district as well. I have Sandridge, District 8 and District 4, to include Super District 10 and Super District 9 commissioners. So now you're talking about 6 commissioners and school board members in one subdivision. So again, what I'm hearing is talking about what shouldn't be and what should be unfair and so forth. We're already experiencing that today. And those maps that were brought forward to us did not rectify all of those problems. When you started rectifying one, you started creating another. And so every time we moved a piece, every single time we moved a piece, it became a problem for another area. So I take exception strongly to anyone to suggest that we did not do our due diligence, that we did not listen, that we did not take into consideration or anything of that nature. I take my position and my job on this commission and on that ad hoc committee very, very seriously, because I know the ramifications of it. And so as a group, at the end of the day, I don't have to explain to elected officials, we are the voice of the people at the end of the day. We made a decision. The majority that was there, we made a decision. We made a decision on the ad hoc committee. We made a decision on this commission. We made a decision on the school board. And for anyone to now determine that those decisions that was made by these elected officials, who are also the voice of the people, based on great amount of consideration and input, to now determine that that is not sufficient, there's something fundamentally wrong with that. We had determined that none of us in the district was going to receive what we needed to receive, because it wasn't going to be a fair situation. When I say fair, a equitable situation amongst all districts, because people didn't want to be split. Well, now it's time for others to bear the same brunts that we've had to bear over the years. And the fact of anyone to say that they would not have representation is just a false statement. You may not have the representation that you want, but you certainly will have representation, and you'll have an opportunity to run yourself if you are placed in a different district to be that representation that you're looking for. And so what had to work for us has to work for everyone. And so this is not a knock against any one area or another. The fact of the matter is, the next 10 years down the road, the growth may be somewhere else, and we'll be going into a different arena and pulling from different areas. It's how it goes. It's just how it goes. And so trying to turn around and do something different at this point, I'm not sure what we're looking for. Because lastly, I'll just simply say consideration was given. Local input was absolutely given. I worked my butt off and looking at these maps and trying to figure out a way that it would be better. But everything we came up with kept still splitting Somerville and Lake Forest or Forest Hills. And that became the crux of this entire issue and this entire problem. And if we're honest, that's exactly what it centers around, in my opinion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. All right, so let's do this. I know I've got the commissioner from the 6th who wants to speak to this matter. I want to calibrate us in light of our timeline. We've got one more item on the other side of this, and that is the City of Augusta State Coordination with Delegation and State Partners. What I do know and understand is that we're not going to resolve and or solve the challenges associated with this conversation around local redistricting. I think what I heard both the senator from the 23rd and the representative from the 123rd say to us is that there's a desire for folks to come to the table and continue this conversation in what now is a legislative setting. Having been there, having seen that, having watched, it's almost like deja vu. I think the commissioner from the 4th said it best. We've been here, we've seen this, we've done that. So in the spirit of collaboration, what I hope is that as we temper our comments, that we look for a path forward on the other side of this, that keeps us at a place that I consistently refer to as One Augusta. Commissioner from the 6th, and then we'll close this out because we're not going to, quote, solve the challenge of local redistricting in this setting. And we want to, again, let the residents of Augusta know that we're working and communicating, and we'll continue to do it on the other side of this. Commissioner from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Senator Max Byrne and Representative Martin Newton, appreciate your comments around the map and the honesty in terms of you won't be able to currently support pretty much, I think, and I'm hoping I'm not misrepresenting your comments, the current map that you have that has been passed by both bodies. Appreciate that. Also, it don't escape me personally. I'm sure the body as well, that possibly just saying, you know, it's not going to pass, it's not going to make it. I appreciate your honesty about that. So the importance to do something different. But I will tell you, I feel like Commissioner Mason, I think I've invested as much as we've invested as much in possibly for where we are to say that I think is the best of everything that was given to us. And I just want to say something about the 12 membership. One of the first things we done at that meeting, Senator Burns, that you know, because it's very obvious that you did just what you said you did. You looked at everything that had happened. So you also know how we got there and was able to choose a simple majority. You know, that was the rules of engagement. We debated that. I wanted to do it just like we do the commission rule. If it's 10 commissioners, take 6 to get anything passed. That didn't happen, you know, with a simple majority. And as a result of that, that's where it was. And that's what it ended up being. But when it got to those respective bodies, the rules of engagement came in play about how they pass local legislation, whether it's school board or whether it's commission. So at the end of the day, that was very, very important. Also, I just want to go back, since we are going back and forth. As a citizen in 2011, I attended all of the redistricting committees, and I can tell you, when they done their final vote, they done unanimous on that map that they had come up with. But when they got the respective bodies, they couldn't get a consensus to get anything done. And so as a result of that, they end up where they end up at. So it's kind of like you seeing something before. But also, I want to say that when we talk about a map with precincts, when precincts are put together, don't mean necessarily that neighborhoods are put together. They don't mean necessarily that neighborhoods are put together, and that's the bigger issue for most of us. I agree once again with Commissioner Mason. I think and let me say this too. I want to back up because I do want to give our chairman, Commissioner Franklin. I think he's done a phenomenal job in shepherding us through this process. I, like you, I agree with that. But also, these three maps, the more you looked at them, and I applaud the IT department, I applaud Ms. Bailey and her team for being involved with those three maps that we saw. And at the end of the day, those 3 maps done more ravaging. And that ravaging, really, I'll be honest with you, is trying to live to what we asked. It was just difficult. It was the idealism that we had in mind, that we can put these neighborhoods back together. We can put these precincts back together. We can build something special and unique. It was a great concept, great ideas that we had in mind, but at the end of the day, all it did was ravage South Augusta in totality. Because at the end of the day, the only thing that was preserved, like Commissioner Mason said, were 3 and 7. Everything else was just torn apart. For myself, I would end up with several of Commissioner Mason's neighborhoods and what on all 3 of those maps. One of them almost half of it that would have came to me in District 6. And so it just was a difficult challenge to do. And what it seemed like, and I will tell you, sometime a neutral party can do all of us some good. That neutral party ended up being the best thing and had the best map that all of us, because you know what they went by? They didn't go by our past hurts and past pain. They went by what the rules of engagement said. That's what they did. They took the rules of engagement and applied them, and that's what we end up all passing. Not unanimously, but that's what ended up passing, because they didn't have any skin in the game. They looked at the basic rules of engagement from the very same state reapportioned office, done that, and we end up voting for that. It was a very challenging. At the last meeting, like you said, Senator Burns, I agree with you once again. Commissioner, the chairman, Commissioner Frampton, got us to agree. We agreed to accept that map and to continue the dialogue. But the dialogue got very difficult coming right out of the gate. No sooner than we adopted it and that we were going to proceed, one school board member immediately, once Lynn Bailey took the initiative based on the rules that she understood it, and began to move persons into another district out of 310 into District 8. That member immediately said, hold up, I don't want them over there. So now it resulted to, if we would have let that pass, it would have happened. We began packing, stacking, and cracking, and 4 and 5, where 8 was the best suit based on the rules of engagement. They said they didn't want them over there. I don't want them over there. And so you had to go back to basics, but at the same time, you're gonna want to make hard decisions about what other folks' districts should look like, but you immediately say, I don't want them in my district. That conversation stopped. So what we decided to do, what I feel confident in, just do what we did. I think we've done the best. We all see it where it ended up at. I do realize who runs the legislative body. We put in a lot of time in this. It was the right thing to do. It is the best map. If Ms. Bailey was here today, she would tell you, she could be out there somewhere. I wish, God knows, I wish we didn't have to do anything. But the law wouldn't allow that. The law would not allow it. And so you couldn't, and so it created a limit for all of us. But it's one that, I think it's the best out of all those maps. I think it's the best we're going to get, because at the end of the day, we're going to end up right back trying to give protection where it's just so unfair that everybody has to make sacrifice except just a few people. And so those are my comments on that, Mr. Mayor. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate my colleagues from the state legislative body being here today as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to go to Representative Newton for closing comment, and then Chairman Howard, if you got anything to add with regards to this matter, and then we're going to move to our final agenda item. Representative Newton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioner Hassan and Commissioner Mason. I appreciate that vigorous support. I think that they are vigorous. I think the challenges in Pepperidge, Heights, and Woodlake were a non-local person, a judge in this case back in 2012, I think, to use one of your terms, ravaging a particular area of Augusta, area I love and invested in. It's a fabulous area, and I would like to think that's one of the things, by bringing community leaders together now with input both from the senator from the 23rd to come up with a will pass the entire delegation. I think working together may be that. I know Commissioner Mason was very vigorous in his defense of his district and his constituents. And I hope you'd allow me the same vigorousness in defending my district, those that elected me to represent them, and doing everything in my power to protect them, to meet their needs that are strongly held and strong desire, and also working together. I know that people don't necessarily want to come to a meeting and be offered an olive branch like Senator Burns, I think, did to where want anybody to agree on the spot. I know I don't like to be put on the spot. I like time to think about something, maybe to seek advice. That's when I make some of my better decisions. I would think, Senator Burns, I know you brought up, should we want to agree to have input from the various constituencies? Maybe the commission decides some people to participate, to come up with a map that can pass the delegation, that can pass maybe even unanimously with the delegation. I know people don't always want to be even asked, will you agree to participate on spur of the moment? Senator Burns in mind, if you've made the offer out there, it doesn't necessarily need an answer, but certainly they can get one. The mayor, I know, mentioned people may want to take a little time to think about whether to participate in an additional level, one more level that's perfectly legal and perfect with the legislative process mapping. But maybe it is best to let everybody wait to even answer whether they're willing to or want to take part in that. But I appreciate that vigorousness in your district, Commissioner Mason and Commissioner Son, and defending them, a great area. I'm going to work hard for Mary as well. And I know the senators, including Senator Jones and others, will work for theirs. But I appreciate the opportunity to work with you guys. I look forward to being in the same room, hopefully, if we can go this. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Representative Newton. And again, the Augusta Commission won't be taking a position or acting on this conversation. We appreciate the forthrightness and honesty in the discussion. I think that's what's important. And we'll convene and we'll talk about what our next steps are, realizing again what the state of play is and how this process can and should move forward at the convening of the legislature on 10 January. Chairman Howard, any additional comments with regards to this?
No, I just want to say thank you to everybody for your passionate pleas and comments. I think that it's good to have honest dialogue, as one of our colleagues on the commission mentioned earlier, and that's what I think we've had here, and hopefully that will lead to positive results. So again, thank everyone for your comments. And
thank you as well. With that, we're going to go to our final item on the agenda today. Again, I want to thank everybody for your attendance and participation. To the members of the delegation who joined us at this time. Administrator Donald, if you'll proceed with this final agenda item.
Well, I think in this year, actually, Representative Frazier and Howard kind of alluded to, I think Chairman Howard highlighted that there are thousands of bills that come through the Georgia General Assembly. And I think Representative Frazier highlighted that, listen, as they're looking for positions and trying to understand that the city's position is, you know, they need a point of contact and somebody who can help them, you know, identify these thousands of bills, what's important to Augusta and what's the impact, and they need to know that in real time. And so for the first time, at least during my tenure, Augusta has received some reinforcements and brought on a state lobbyist. I don't even think the ink is, you know, dry on the agreement yet. Just brought on a firm. I think we'll be onboarding them tomorrow to help support our efforts down at the Capitol to really do just that, to make sure that when our delegation needs any type of input, whether it be the subjects that y'all are being passionate about right now and discussing, or if it's those bills that we talked about, making sure that the bill numbers, our positions, anything that creeps up that we're not aware of, that parties can talk very quickly and relate information, very similar to what our partners in Columbia County and other folks are doing to make sure that their positions are known by their delegations. I think the other thing that gets lost, and I know I've had a conversation with you, Mr. Mayor, and you're very aware, is that Augusta is currently in pursuit in about $80 million in state funds that happens outside of the 40-day legislative session. That's kind of vital for us. We've got 4 projects that this firm will help us coordinate with the governor's office and the various agencies, state agencies that will award these funds. We've got about $25 million in I&I funds that we're pursuing for the reduction of inflow in our sewers, about $250,000 for monitoring for the Savannah River that is vital to us. $45 million in headworks at the wastewater treatment plant that we're pursuing, as well as about $8 million to replace the gates at the canal on the city's infrastructure, which, while it'll benefit the Canal Authority, it's kind of vital for us to make sure that we are able to manage that flow. And so that's just a portion of the funds that we're pursuing, as well as making sure we shepherd the $4 million we received in partnership with Golden Harvest and another $2 million in innovative CDBG funds that we're pursuing. So as we move into the legislative session, but also hopefully new partnership with the state government and the governor's office in the 2022 calendar year, we have a point of contact that, again, just like the documents we referenced today, we'll be sharing with the delegation, who can kind of serve as our mouthpiece and response. I know I heard either Representative Frazier or Chairman Howard highlight that they want to have me on speed dial, which is fine, but I do have a variety of departments and other responsibilities, and not necessarily a legislative subject matter expert. So we brought on that type of expertise to be able to support not only our efforts down at the Gold Dome, but with all of the state agencies.
Thank you, Administrator Donald. Are there any questions from the members of our delegation?
Not a question, Mr. Mayor, but just a comment.
Sure, go ahead, please.
Just like to say thank you, Mr. Donald. That is exactly what we need. I know that you're very busy. And so when we're up there, legislation moves very, very fast. Sometimes we don't even know about a piece of legislation. It might be happening it the night before and then presented the next morning. So it's good to have someone that we can go immediately to. I look forward to meeting and hopefully very soon, hopefully next week,
yes, ma'am.
Who will be our legislative contact. Thank you so much. Great idea.
And we'll be coordinating. I mean, it's very, very new. And so we'll be coordinating our onboarding meeting tomorrow. And right after that, we'll be working with the commission and the delegation to make sure we make those connections.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Chairman Howard, I'm going to turn it over to you for closing comments, sir.
Well, we look forward to, I concur with my colleague, Representative Frazier. This is really long time coming for a government affairs person to be a part of this process. And so we look forward to working with that person, and I look forward to a meeting to coordinate us knowing who we are working with.
Yes, sir.
Because at this time, I don't know if anyone knows who those persons or that person will be. We know the name of the company, but we look forward to meeting and getting to know who that is.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Administrator Donald, can you speak to that?
Yeah, so we'll plan to do that tomorrow. I know that, and I'm sure they're very familiar with Mr. Robert Highsmith, and I'm not so sure if they're as familiar with Ms. Rubinson.
They
from,
know Marcy.
oh, okay.
They all know Marcy.
Got it. Well, then,
Yeah.
that firm, and of course, those are the two primes for Georgia and will be representing us. But I mean, as you guys know, they have a team of about 12, 14 people that coordinate various aspects. But the primary point of contact will be Ms. Rubinson. I believe when it comes to any heavy lifting, Mr. Highsmith kind of coordinates those activities. And listen, in other cities, they've been a very worthy adversary. So glad that we've got them working on our side now.
What other cities are they working with?
So they were working with Atlanta. I'm not sure if they represent them anymore, but I know they represent Savannah as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chairman Howard, I think, again, you all are very familiar with Marcia Rubinson. She was with EMA at a point in time. She then left and went to work for another group. Now she's a principal at Holland and Knight. Many of you are all very familiar with Robert Highsmith. He was a partner, or is a partner at Holland and Knight, former colleague of former Senator, Representative, and Mayor Kasim Reed. But he's no stranger to state government, having represented the city of Atlanta on some of their most challenging issues. Again, both names well known under the Gold Dome.
Well, we look, excuse me. Had some ice in my mouth, sorry about that. But yeah, we look forward to working with both of those persons and having a formal greeting and introduction as to where we need to, as a delegation, support them in their efforts, and they can support us in our efforts. So as soon as that can happen, we look forward to it.
Sir.
And with that being said, is there any other comments from any members of the delegation? I see names, but I don't see faces, so I'm not sure if y'all have any comments here.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to thank the commission. I appreciate the opportunity to have a dialogue, and I look forward to working with you as we move forward. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, Mr. Mayor, I think that sort of wraps up what we have to talk about here from the delegation's position. And we want to thank the commission for allowing us to be a part of this dialogue, and look forward to, we say it, but I think I heard Representative Frazier, I think, allude to this. We probably need to have some sort of a midterm or after session dialogue to sort of keep us up to date and not wait a whole year before we meet again. So let's think about that. And if all of us agree, let's try to put that into action before this session is out. I know we got an election year, but we still have issues that we have to deal with. So I think it would be prudent for us to consider some sort of a midterm or after session meeting or mid-year meeting dialogue to talk about issues that we may be facing and how we can help each other. So just like that. So let's just threw that on the table as a point of reference conversation.
Yeah, I agree with that, Chairman Howard. And maybe what we do in light of the conversations today, what we should anticipate is meeting before crossover day. We'll convene a similar conversation in this type of format that could be helpful. And we do that at the point in time right before crossover.
That will be good.
Okay. Like that.
Okay, so we would look forward to that. And like you said, this format here virtual may be the best situation because everybody can pick up their device wherever they may be and join into the conversation. So thanks again. And we look forward to more dialogue as we go along.
All right, fantastic. And so as we proceed with the convening of the legislature on Monday, as you get adjournment resolutions, let's make sure we stay in touch so that as we're tracking towards crossover, we can schedule a meeting of these bodies.
Okay.
All right, wonderful.
I just like to make one last comment, if I may, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
The legislative liaisons that we are going to have at the state capitol, do we need to call Odie or do we talk directly to him? Because are they going to be up to date on legislation and how it's going to affect Augusta-Richmond County? And are they going to be able to answer any questions that we have pertaining to that legislation on whatever day that bill is being presented? I just want to be able to know so I can make an informed vote.
Yes, ma'am. And when we onboard them and we follow up with the meeting that Chairman Howard responded to, we'll work through all of that coordination and do it at your preference in the manner that you would like. But it is a law firm, so they will be kind of advising us as well by dissecting the legislation. Those activities on our behalf and would get the okay from the city before a position is taken. So yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And also, I'd just like to throw this out there, Mr. Chairman, during the first week of next week, we are all running around the Capitol because of COVID restrictions. I don't know whether we're actually going to physically be able to meet somewhere or schedule a meeting. It's so chaotic. Can you please just have our lobbyists or legislative liaison call us out one-on-one to make that introduction if by chance we can't all meet at the same time?
If you're asking me that, we'll get that coordination started and then coordinate directly with Chairman Howard. I mean, he and I have been talking fairly regularly here lately, so we'll make sure to get whatever coordination you collectively need in place.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, for the good of the order, is there anything else?
I think we've covered a lot.
Okay.
All right.
We wish you all well next week and much success in the 2022 legislative session, and stay safe. Happy New Year to each and every one of you and your families, and be well. And remember, we are all one Augusta.